Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. So, like I said in my each of other, I believe, 4 episodes at this point today, I've had to change my recording setup just a little bit, so I might sound just a bit different, but bear with me, please. This might just be for the next couple days, hopefully. Regardless, if you haven't heard my earliest recording from today, my earliest episode from today, I should say, make sure you check that one out at some point. Mech Titan Core is a fantastic card. Megazord is here, and it very well might just be the coolest card of all time. And speaking of cool cards, have you ever wanted a saga that can just win you the game, or should I say make your opponents lose the game? Well, make sure you check out my episode on Hidetsugu Consumes All. And of course, if you're a fan of Affinity or Dig Through Time, or you are scared of Affinity or Dig Through Time, make sure you check out my episode on Reality Heist. Yeah, this card is going to be quite powerful in the right decks. And speaking of powerful, don't leave just yet, because on this episode, I'm going to be talking about, well, let's jump into it to find out. So, Fable of the Mirror Breaker is a brand new saga from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It costs 2 and a red, and like all the sagas, it's going to enter the battlefield with a lore counter on it, and then you get a lore counter after your draw step. Its first lore counter says, create a 2/2 red goblin shaman creature token with, whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. Its second lore counter says you may discard up to 2 cards if you do draw that many cards. And its third lore counter is, exile this saga, then return to the battlefield transformed under your control. And this transforms into Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, an enchantment creature goblin shaman that's a 2/2, and it has pay 1, tap, create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, accept it as haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Now, that text might sound very similar, and we'll get to that here in a second, but first up, let's just cover the front of the saga to start. So that first lore counter can be quite solid. Again, this is a 3 mana saga to get into play, and right away you get a 2/2 that has, when it attacks, it gives you treasure. So a 2/2 is obviously not that large of a body, but the very least you're going to get a treasure out of this when you swing with it, and if you swing multiple times with it, you can get more and more treasure from it. So yeah, I mean, potential temporary mana advantage can be a very good thing. Its second lore counter, you may discard up to 2 cards if you do draw that many cards, can be a great way to ditch some, cards that you don't need in your hand and exchange them out for some better ones. So yeah, basically like a rummaging effect here. Obviously, this can also help out in certain strategies like, Reanimator or, Madness, that kind of stuff. But obviously, we didn't come here for the first 2 lore counters. We came here to talk about the third lore counter, which is exile this saga, then return to the battlefield transformed under your control. So it flips over to the back, and on that back side, we've got what is nearly the old Kiki-Jiki. Basically, Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker version 2 with a slight change, and actually a very important change, but one that we'll talk about how we can work with still. Now, some other changes on this card that are pretty noticeable are, well, obviously, first off, the name. This is just not Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker on the back of a card. The fact that this is also now an enchantment creature, but they did take off the fact that it was legendary, so it is no longer a legendary creature. But to talk about the main change from this card, let's compare it to the original Kiki-Jiki. So Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker is a famous, or maybe I should say infamous, card in Magic's history, a 2/2 Goblin Shaman with haste that costs 2 red, red, red. It has tap, create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That token has haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So the text on this card is incredibly similar, yet there are 2 key differences that change up this card from our new one. First up, you'll actually notice that haste is up there at the top, and the original Kiki-Jiki definitely did have haste. And though technically the saga is in play, for a while, because it does exile, then come back into play transformed and not just, transform right away, it doesn't have, the ability to just tap right away, unless you've got another way to actually give that enchantment creature haste. So whereas a deck built around numerous combos with this Kiki-Jiki can just pretty much pop off right away because of that haste, you might be telegraphing a bit more with that actual Fable. Well, actually even more so, because you've got to get the saga out, and then you've got to have it flip, and then it's got to survive, a pretty much a full turn unless you give it haste to be able to actually activate and tap it. And of course, that activation is another key difference, and this one obviously does not have any kind of a cost to it other than just tapping Kiki-Jiki, whereas Reflection of Kiki-Jiki does have you pay 1. Now that is a substantial difference, still one that we can work with to, pretty much make it broken in, a certain combination of cards. But again, it does make a difference because a lot of the cards that comboed with this original Kiki-Jiki essentially just comboed, as a two-part combo. You had this and then one other card, and there were a ton of other cards that comboed with this on their own. So obviously Wizards worked to tone down the new Kiki-Jiki card, by taking away haste and again making you pay for it. There were tweaks, but there are still broken things that you can do with it. That being said, let's go through some cards really quickly that, are infamous with Kiki-Jiki that, no longer combo on their own, I should say, with the Reflections of Kiki-Jiki card. So we of course have Zealous Conscripts, Deceiver Exarch, and Pestermite. Zealous Conscripts is a 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Untap that permanent, gains haste until end of turn. So essentially, with Kiki-Jiki, you essentially tap Kiki, you make a copy of this, it comes into play, you choose Kiki-Jiki to untap it. So then you do another one, and another one, and another one, and you keep making more and more Zealous Conscripts, basically essentially, an infinite amount, as many as you essentially want, and then they're 3/3s with haste, and you swing out, and you win. In a similar way, there's Deceiver Exarch, a 1/4 with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you choose to untap target permanent you control, which is of course Kiki-Jiki. So you tap Kiki-Jiki to make a token copy of Deceiver Exarch, which has haste, and then that ETB happens, which makes you untap Kiki. Then you make another one, and another one, and another one. And again, even though they're just 1/4s, that doesn't matter because you've got an infinite number of copies of them, so that's still infinite damage to all of your opponents. Or again, okay, I guess I shouldn't say infinite because you technically need to choose a number, so say 1,000,000,000, okay? Regardless, obviously, Pestermite basically does the exact same thing, a 2/1 with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may tap or untap target permanent. Now, with the new Reflections of Kiki-Jiki, you can still make multiple copies of these, but the only problem is that obviously, you've got to pay for them. Instead of just tapping, your Kiki-Jiki, you have to pay 1 to tap the Reflections of Kiki-Jiki to make that copy. So essentially you can make 1 copy for as much mana as you have. Now that can still be a very powerful thing, but obviously that's not infinite and it's not nearly as broken. But of course there are ways to actually make this essentially work in the exact same way and be just as broken, though obviously we do need at least 1 more card to make it work. So one way to do that is with a card like Panharmonicon, an artifact that costs 4, and it says if an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers initial time. Essentially, hey, double up your ETBs. So when, say, we make a copy of Pestermite with Reflections of Kiki-Jiki, obviously we have to pay 1 and tap it to do so, but when Pestermite comes into play, we get its trigger twice. So with one of its untapped triggers, we can obviously untap Reflections of Kiki-Jiki, but with its other one, we can untap one of our lands. And obviously, pretty much any land will do, any land that just basically taps for 1 mana, like a basic land. But if we've got something like maybe like a bounce land in play, which taps for 2 mana, we can actually generate infinite mana because of this as well. Now, obviously, if you're making infinite creatures and you can just swing out and win that way, you probably don't need infinite mana. Just thought I'd point that out though. Now, another somewhat similar way to basically get this exact same effect is with cards like Annoying Procession, Doubling Season, and Parallel Lives. Annoying Procession says, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. And then Doubling Season and Parallel Lives basically say the exact same thing. So yeah, ways to double up the amount of tokens that we're going to be making. So now when we pay 1 and tap Kiki-Jiki to make a copy of, again, let's say Pestermite, we are getting 2 token copies instead of 1. So again, we're getting 2 ETBs instead of 1. So much like Panharmonicon, again, one of those ETBs is going to have us untap Kiki-Jiki, or again, I should say Reflections of Kiki-Jiki, and the other can just untap a land. One other incredibly broken card that can help us out and can actually help us generate infinite mana in this combination is Mana Echoes. It's an enchantment for 2 red, and it says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colorless equal to the number of creatures you control that share a creature type with it. So again, with our Pestermite example, we pay 1 and tap Kiki-Jiki, or should I say again, Reflections of Kiki-Jiki to make a copy of Pestermite, then we get a token copy of it. Obviously, our Fairy Rogue Pestermite token is going to, match on a creature type with our other Pestermite, which is already in play, a Fairy Rogue, so we're going to get a colorless from that. And again, with Pestermite's ETB trigger, we untap Reflections of Kiki-Jiki, and now we're basically at the exact same spot we just were. So we can utilize that colorless to actually tap and activate Reflections of Kiki-Jiki again. So we make another copy of Pestermite, this time generating 2 colorless mana. So we can keep doing this again and again and again, and we essentially get infinite colorless mana and infinite Pestermites, and yeah, there are plenty of ways to win from there. Now, of course, there are other combinations of cards that can work that do require more cards. I just thought I'd point out some ones that just required 1 extra card instead of 2, but hey, if you want to utilize a combo that includes, like something like Village Bell Ringer or Great Oak Guardian and, maybe a mana dork like Land of War Elves, that can work as well. You tap your Land of War Elves for a green, you activate your Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, and then you make a token copy of Great Oak Guardian, which has, when it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until end of turn, untap them. So you essentially untap all of your creatures, they all get +2/+2, your Land of War Elves can now tap again for mana, you can tap again Reflections of Kiki-Jiki again, and you keep doing this again and again and again. So now you've got infinite copies of Great Oak Guardian, and everything is infinitely large, and you win. Or should I say again, you swing out and you win, and as long as you dish out damage to your opponents, then that's game. Now, one final combo piece that actually still basically works in the exact same way as the old Kiki-Jiki is with Time Stream Navigator. She's a 1/1 human pirate wizard with a send that costs 1 and a blue. She has pay 2 blue, tap, put Time Stream Navigator on the bottom of its owner's library, take an extra turn for this one, activate this ability only if you have the City's Blessing. So again, as long as you've got the City's Blessing, which is a very easy requirement to meet, again you need 10 permanents, then you've got the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. So you just pay 1, tap and activate Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, and then you get a copy of Time Stream Navigator, you pay your 2 blue, and tap the Time Stream Navigator token that you made, and then you just get an extra turn. The token goes away because it's going to go on the bottom of your library, which, it's a token, so it won't do that, but you still have your original in play that you can copy next turn. So obviously this is slightly easier for a combination with the original Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker because you don't have to pay that extra 1, but still, it's a combo that works, for 5 mana instead of 4 mana, but basically in the exact same way. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Fable the Mirror Breaker / Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. I definitely didn't expect to see a Kiki-Jiki card in this set, or at least one that essentially has, a copy-pasted version of it as a card. Now, obviously, they did tone this down quite a bit. Again, you've got to wait for this to actually, exile and come back. Again, if you don't have a way to give it haste, you can't activate it right away, and you do have to pay for that activation now. So if you want to actually break this card, there are quite a few more steps, but it can still do some incredibly broken things when you're set up to do so. That being said, yeah, I am excited to see what players do with this, and I am very excited to see even more spoilers coming out, so make sure that you stay tuned to this channel for more quick takes on more exciting spoilers in the near future. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.